Well, war, tyranny, it's all up on us now. This is the political pastor here, and I'm with the country colonel today, so this is a rare treat. Good to have you on. So he's always providing good content on thepoliticalpastor.com. So I'm interested to hear a little bit about his thoughts on some things going on in our world today. And just recently we put up an article that you've written on thepoliticalpastor.com. Tell us a little bit about what that article is addressing.
Okay, thank you, Pastor. And yes, I drafted a short article concerning the potential for a conflict in Ukraine, a conflict between the United States and the Russian forces. If we engage in Ukraine to prevent their further incursion into Russia into Ukraine, that's one thing. Except that in doing so, what you've done is you've pitted the U.S. against Russia. We've been avoiding that since before World War II for a reason. Putin is a diabolical person. We all know that, and he's despicable, and we should disdain everything that he does for the most part. But if we engage with the Poles in this case and the Ukrainians, we'll be engaging Russia. And that would be, in effect, a declaration of war with Russia. Now, our Constitution states that only Congress can declare war. If our president unilaterally engages with the Poles and the Ukrainians against Russia, then he has declared war on Russia. And they would have every right, under international law or any other common sense law, to retaliate against the United States. Well, as we all know, Putin is not a sound man, in our opinions, and he's intimated strongly that he would use nuclear weapons. So what would we do then? Well, the logical thing is that we would retaliate with nuclear weapons, and there you go. Then you'd end up with a nuclear exchange between superpowers that could destroy not only themselves but the rest of mankind. And our president would be doing so unilaterally without the consent of Congress. If you recall, Pastor, hasn't been since 1942 when Congress declared war against Romania. We'd already at war with Germany, Nazi Germany, declared war against them. But at any rate, since 1942, we have not had a constitutionally declared war where Congress has done its duties. Now, in 1973, under the War Powers Resolution Act that former President Nixon vetoed and then finally signed, it gives Congress the authority to authorize the president, it directs the president, if he's going to act as commander-in-chief, he's got 48 hours to notify Congress of that action, and then 60 days to engage forces in whatever manner. Then he has to go back to Congress and ask for reauthorization or a declaration of war. Well, since a fight with the Russians could very easily end up in a nuclear exchange, yes, you heard it, World War III, I think it'd be very prudent for the president, before he would do something like this with the 101st Division, to ask Congress. We need sober-minded people considering all the pros and cons of doing this before we endanger the lives of, let's say, all the United States, all the world, because a nuclear exchange won't be won. It'd just be decimation across the globe.
Now, sober-minded, that's an interesting statement that you made, because you mentioned that Putin was not very sound. But right. What about our commander-in-chief and even Congress? We're talking about sober-minded people. If we're going to go to them, I mean, what's the state of our leadership?
Again, Pastor, that's a sad state of affairs that we're in. We've got a whack job over in Russia, and regardless of how you vote or didn't vote for the current occupant of the White House, his actions, particularly of late, would cause any prudent person to question his mental stability and or abilities. And so that's pretty sad. If he were to do this, that is to say, send the 101st Division into Ukraine and engage the Russians, we need a check on him. Congress, you may or may not have any use for Congress, but there are 535 people to consider this before we just go to war. And so I think a lot of concern needs to be given to this. And unfortunately, the president, is placing our military forces, our commanders and leaders, in a very difficult circumstance. Every one of those men and women wearing a uniform want to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, or the country of the United States. They want to obey the orders of those appointed over them. But be sure on this matter, no man or woman in the armed forces ever vowed loyalty to a person. They pledge their allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and not to a person. Also, and unfortunately, every man and woman has to make a moral and ethical and legal decision to either obey or disobey an order. Keep this in mind, Pastor, that they're only obligated to obey legal orders.
Right.
And if the order is illegal, they are also, by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, obliged to not follow it. Now that puts a service member at dire risk, not only of his life and his livelihood, but of his freedom. And if they were to say, I won't obey that order, they then become the object of much scrutiny, and they will have to prove that it was an illegal order. But I'm here to tell you, if the President of the United States unilaterally declares war on Russia with no imminent threat to the United States, it would be an illegal order.
Yeah.
Now, the question is going to be if we have men and women in uniform with the fortitude to say no.
Yeah, what a shame to put them in that position, isn't it?
It is.
And you mentioned earlier World War III, and you kind of see that stuff floating around everywhere out there, but I know you don't use that lightly. You are a retired U.S. Army colonel, so you know a little bit about what you're speaking about here. So what do you think are really the possibilities of that? You throw World War III out there.
If we were dealing with prudent people on both sides, I would say that would be very slim. There would be limited engagements, but when Putin has intimated strongly that he would use nuclear weapons, I'm sure he didn't just say that to be saying that. Now, the axiom that you want to go by is if a bad actor wants to tell you he's going to kill you or tells you he's going to kill you, you would be prudent to believe that. And that's what Putin has said, that if things don't go his way, he may well use nuclear weapons. Well, what would our president do if he deployed a nuclear weapon against us?
Wow. Scary times that we're in right now. So I encourage you guys to stay in touch and keep up with us. We'll keep you updated as things go on. The Country Colonel has the article on thepoliticalpastor.com. Make sure you go there and read that article that says we are up on the precipice. So check that out by the Country Colonel. This is the Political Pastor, and I'm out.